All right, what's going on, everybody? Let me turn the music off here. All right. Everybody can hear me? Feel like I haven't been here in a while. Good afternoon, good morning, whatever. I guess right on the still morning for a minute and a half. How's everybody doing? Live shot right there at the Capitol. Good morning, everybody. We're just going to see what happens here together. See what happens. How's everybody doing? You hear me loud and clear? That's good. Everything is working. Hello, all of my friends. How are you? What's up, John? Hello, everybody. Welcome on in. What's up, Dave? Any predictions? Not really. I was right up until about 2 minutes ago. No, are you kidding me? Nah, I'm up and at 'em pretty early. Kids off to school. Hello, everybody. Welcome in, welcome in, welcome in. GOP needs a big show of unity on this vote. Yeah? Okay. What is that? The big vote of unity that says what? We're all for big spending and money to Ukraine. That's the unity we're showing behind this guy. I heard you snoring, Damon. Welcome on in, everybody. Oh boy, that's a good question. I didn't even think about that. Well, I guess it would really only truly be 10 years for me and Vin. And really, Vin had a couple years off, so it's really 10 years for me. So I'm going to throw myself a party, yeah. Chip Roy on the phone already. This isn't the time to fight over the speakership. These are Trump is already in office. He's going to be in office on January 20th. What happens today is going to have nothing to do with whether he gets sworn in on the 20th. That's going to happen no matter what. All right, let's listen in.
Pursuant to the 20th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States, for the meeting of the 119th Congress of the United States, the House will come to order. The prayer will be offered by Chaplain Kibben.
Would you pray with me? Gather us together, sovereign God, from the north and south, from the east and west, from the right and the left, and in your mercy, consecrate the work you have called us to do in this 119th Congress. As we convene to establish and uphold the laws of this nation, may we devote our hearts anew to you and stretch out our hands to receive your instruction. With our spirits oriented toward you, may we be willing to put away all selfish motives, any rancorous thought that may harbor within us, and the sin that we too often cling to, and allow no evil or wickedness to gain a foothold in or penetrate this tent of governance. On this day and the days and months and years ahead, May we be found to be free of fault and true of faith and allegiance when we lift up our faces to you. May we, without fear or reservation nor purpose of evasion, stand blameless before you and the people we serve. We ask this and pray your blessing on this Congress and on these United States. In the strength of your divine name we pray. Amen.
The representatives-elect and their guests will please remain standing and join in the Pledge of Allegiance. As directed by law, the Clerk of the House has prepared the official roll of the representatives-elect. Certificates of election covering 435 seats in the 119th Congress have been received by the Clerk of the House. The names of those persons whose credentials show that they were regularly elected as representatives in accord with the laws of their respective states or of the United States will be called. The representatives-elect will record their presence by electronic device, and their names will be reported in alphabetical order by state, beginning with the state of Alabama, to determine whether a quorum is present. Representatives-elect will have a minimum of 15 minutes to record their presence by electronic device. Representatives-elect who have not obtained their voting card may do so now in the speaker's lobby.
All right. Seems like maybe that's all we're going to get for now. We'll just turn the volume down here. We'll leave it up. Why did C-SPAN not let us hear the pledge? I don't know if it was C-SPAN or the mics there. They may be gated, have a tremendous gate on it, and it just didn't pick it up. Who knows? It's probably something to do with what's going on inside the House, and less probably about C-SPAN if I had a guess, but I don't know. Okay, so let's see. I see a bunch of comments here. Oh, look at there's Debbie Wasserman Schultz looking like she just got out of the pool, of course. Okay, this is where I left off. Let's see. Hoosier. I think Fetterman may vote for Johnson. Really? Damon, if he doesn't win Hakeem Jeffries? No. Hakeem Jeffries is not going to get to 218 unless he gets 4 Republicans to vote for him. Good morning, BBQ. John, hello. Support America First in DJT. So is America First is sending more money to Ukraine and blowing the budget and deficit spending like Mike Johnson's done for his whole term? Good morning, Les. This isn't the time to fight over speakership. We must focus on getting Trump in office. Well, Trump is getting in office no matter what happens here. And if this isn't the time, when is the time? 50 trillion in debt, 60 trillion in debt? When is the time to argue and stand up for? I guess the first question is I'm not really sure what we all believe in. I said this. My basic argument on this whole thing is that if what Johnson has done in the last 4 years, 3 years, whatever it's been, 2.5 years, is indistinguishable from what McCarthy did, from what Ryan did, from what Boehner did, and from what any other Republican has done when it comes to debt ceilings, budget fights, money to Ukraine without congressional approval, all the things that he's done, if they're indistinguishable between each other, then why is it just because one person who we all acknowledge that we love and support and want to see him do well, because he says he supports him, we all say, okay, well, we don't believe in any of that anymore, I guess, so we'll just go with him and think that somehow we're going to get anything different. I mean, just as an example, I was rage tweeting this morning just because it's just so laughable to some degree. Insurrection Barbie says, we have a Republican majority, but we don't have a majority of Republicans. Politics is the art of the possible. I don't like that, but it's the reality, and we have to operate in that reality. And as I said, if the deals in the legislation that the speaker has been responsible for is indistinguishable from the last 3 speakers that everybody railed against, then there's no difference between them. And if the only way to support Trump is to drop all of the courage of all of our convictions and just quote unquote go with it, we're in big trouble. Matt Gaetz tweeting, Mike Johnson will be elected speaker today on the first vote. People might not like that or dislike it. I'm just reporting the news. Every time I read that, I just laugh out loud, given kind of, I don't know. Like, if you want to talk about like home base for speakerships, it would probably be in Matt Gaetz' front doorstep. Marjorie Taylor Greene, May 6th of this year. Sound up. House Republicans know this is true. And Hakeem Jeffries started controlling the House when Johnson became Speaker. Anyone that hears this and still defends Mike Johnson's speakership is okay with uniparty control.
Minority Leader Jeffries could potentially become the first black Speaker of the House, though to hear him tell it, the Democrats are already in charge.
Even though we're in the minority, we effectively have been governing as if we were in the majority because we continue to provide a majority of the votes necessary to get things done. Those are just the facts.
Those are just the facts. I know that is the facts. When you look at the votes and every bill that passes, what do I say at night? Well, it's got more Democrat support than Republicans. When every Democrat votes for it, you know you have a problem. Marjorie Taylor Greene, March 25th of this year. Here's something to think about. Just days before President Trump faced a record-breaking $400+ million bond to appeal an unjust political persecution, Speaker Johnson fully funded Biden's DOJ, who's trying to throw President Trump in jail for the rest of his life. Why is the Republican Speaker doing the bidding of the Communist Democrats? Marjorie Taylor Greene, April 28th. That's my birthday. Mike Johnson has betrayed Republicans so badly, if he remains Speaker, he will cost us the House majority. Well, that didn't happen, thankfully. He bowed to Biden, giving him everything he wanted, and no one trusts him to stop the Democrats' destruction of America. People are saying there's no difference between Johnson and Pelosi. The Republican Party needs to learn the valuable lesson that our voters have been trying to tell them. Fight with actions that actually stop the madness, not run your mouth and pass messaging bills that do nothing. Give your voters a reason to vote Republican, not reasons to give up and lose hope. I support President Trump, and I am working as hard as possible to help him win in November and winning a Republican House and Senate majority, but I do not support Speaker Johnson. He funded the DOJ, FBI, and today voted against warrant requirements for FISA. Oops. 9 days ago, Thomas Massie, on January 3rd, will elect the Speaker of the House. Should members vote for Mike Johnson, someone else? 180,000 votes. 93% of 180,000 people thought someone else. Not today. Mike Pence today. Speaker Johnson's led the House of Representatives with integrity, principle, and a servant's heart. I urge every member of the House GOP to vote to reelect this good and decent man as Speaker of the House. And I'm sure he is a good and decent man. But I don't think many people are politically aligned with Mike Pence these days when it comes to this. But I guess they are here. So my only point through all of this continues to be, what the hell is it that we stand for? And if we stand for nothing, then that is what it is, and we'll just roll with whatever whichever way it rolls. But I just don't understand the amount of people who are just willing to say, well, yeah, you know what? I felt like this, and I really didn't support this, and I really didn't support that, and I really thought he was terrible on this, and I really thought he was terrible on that, and the debt ceiling deal was terrible, and he keeps standing for money to Ukraine, and I can't stand Mike Pence, but you know what? I'm just willing to stuff that all under the carpet, and let's just roll with him again. I just don't get that. Like, I don't get it. And if he doesn't get the vote on the first ballot, and then we have to start going and whipping votes and figuring out, like, why couldn't we have done that for somebody else? Why couldn't we have done the same process for Byron Donalds? Why couldn't we have done the same process for somebody else? Someone who's maybe not even in Congress. All of the fighting we did over I just don't get it. And I will not get it. No matter what happens and no matter what people say. I don't get dropping all of the courage of all of our convictions that we supposedly care about because we feel like that's the only way to support Trump. I just don't and will never get that. So if Mike Johnson gets elected and Trump can get out of him what he feels like he needs, again, I don't even know what he feels like he can get out of him. What does Trump and Johnson align on? I mean, that's probably a discussion for another day, policy-wise at this point. I mean, just 2 weeks ago when Johnson was going around everybody's back and trying to work with the Democrats to get a debt ceiling, clean debt ceiling lifted of $3 trillion or whatever it was, and people were screaming, oh, look, about this guy going behind everybody's back. Everybody even then wanted him out, but all of a sudden now. If Johnson fails, Trump owns it. Yeah, but see, it's not even like it's not even if John. So what equals Johnson failing? Raising the debt ceiling, another $3 trillion in deficit spent. Like what equals failing that he hasn't already done? So like if Johnson's going to win the vote, and then when money to Ukraine comes up and he starts continuing to send it there, is that failing? Because we know that's happening. So again, have you decided whether you're for that or against that when it happens? Like that's the thing. How is that Pelosi? I don't know. The Balvini's still half full. Maybe she can still walk. I'm not sure. No, they don't win. Exactly. They don't win at all. And you'll get nothing different. Becky, with all due respect, how can it not matter when we're talking about the subject matters we're doing? You have kids, you have grandkids, I'm sure you do. How can it not matter? $36 trillion in debt becomes $50 trillion in the next 4 to 8 years, it doesn't matter that the Speaker of the House continues to usher through deals that are indistinguishable from deals that Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer would usher through with Hakeem Jeffries? How can it not matter? Yeah, I know, but the problem is the bite part is like what you actually are willing to stand for. And quite frankly, all I see right now is everybody willing to cave for what they stand for. There's no bite. Let's listen in here.
Vacate this. It went from one to a handful, and that is really, really important because it makes the ability for someone to be able to boot a speaker much more difficult. Now, that was a rules package that was negotiated by the Main Street Caucus, which is a group of more centrist Republicans in the House GOP conference that worked with the House Freedom Caucus to pass that measure. So it's going to be really, really interesting to see, should that measure be adopted, how this continues. And of course, it's good news for whoever becomes Speaker, because it would mean that it will be much more difficult for them to lose that gavel.
Daniela Diaz, do we expect any other legislative business after the rules package and the election of the Speaker?
Well, there's a lot of new members.
Yeah, Gone, with all due respect, Trump was in on the debt ceiling raise. He was tweeting about how he wanted it done before he came into office.
You can just feel the buzz from lawmakers.
In my opinion, that's not a great sign.
Being able to be here. So it appears that should the 119th rules package be adopted, lawmakers will clear out, be able to join the festivities for the new Congress. But then business continues tomorrow. The House Republican Conference is planning to meet to discuss this huge reconciliation package that they're hoping to pass in the first 100 days using a process called budget reconciliation. That means that they don't need Democratic votes to be able to pass legislation should it contain budgetary measures. That measure, of course, being tax policies, immigration policies. That is what Donald Trump is pushing Republicans to work on as soon as possible. And that is why we're seeing a lot of rank and file Republicans say that they want a speaker's in the chair as soon as possible. They can start their work on that. They're planning to meet tomorrow at some point to discuss that package behind closed doors. And that's what we're going to see from this conference from Republicans in Congress, from the White House after January.
Yes. Yes. You know you're in good company when you get Dan Crenshaw. I'm voting for Speaker Johnson because he's a solid conservative ready to push forward our agenda. Oh, yes. Yep. We're all big Dan Crenshaw fans again. If you're not voting for Johnson, but you have no plan for another speaker, well, how can you have a plan for another speaker if you don't even have the Republicans in the House even gotten together to does anyone actually think there's not another Republican that could get to 218? All right. Well, I'm keeping an eye on the floor. There's nothing going on. They're still all rambling around. We have an entire weekend until Monday. Trump takes office 120. It's worth spending a day to at least demand concessions that we don't render the next 2 years like every other damn failed trifecta. Because absent a course correction and agreement, that is where we clearly are headed. That is absolutely correct. It should be, and we should have, by the way, we should have taken an entire weekend to see if the votes were there for someone else to get some support or get close to 218, but we wouldn't even know that. I'll be supporting Speaker Johnson tomorrow to lead the House once again. Speaker Johnson is the most conservative speaker we've ever had. I guess when people say that, they just mean like they're talking him personally. He's a good man. He's a Christian, fully committed to working with President Trump. I mean, what oversight has Congress done? We've allowed 14 million unvetted individuals into the country, leaving communities grappling with rising crime rates while altering how crime rates are reported to deceive the public and enabling the trafficking of large numbers of children. Congress continues to approve funding for the Taliban, even as it holds 3 American hostages and allows the U.S. intelligence community to perpetuate the false narrative that the group is fighting ISKP, despite ISKP growing threefold without a single senior leader being captured or killed. Speaking of ISIS, we strike ISIS in Syria despite not knowing how many troops we have based there, while its senior leadership is in Pakistan and Afghanistan. We also did a strike in Somalia against the leader of al-Shabaab while he was based in Kandahar, Afghanistan. Our government repeatedly relies on last-minute flawed deals to avoid shutdowns and withheld approving much-needed hurricane aid for months to use as leverage in their bloated CR. Veterans are committing suicide at alarming rates, with some even being radicalized by terrorist groups, as seen in New Orleans just this week. Our college campuses have become extremist indoctrination centers, with no agitators being stripped of their student visas, nor honest truths about just how much Qatari funding is backing this. China now owns key assets, including land infrastructure and port facilities on U.S. soil. They just hacked the U.S. Treasury Department. Meanwhile, our own infrastructure has a C- rating and needs $2.6 trillion in 10 years just to make necessary upgrades and improvements. Congress failed to hold anyone accountable for the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan or for ignoring clear warning signs of Russia's impending invasion of Ukraine, and enforces no oversight on how the dollars going to support Ukraine get spent. They won't even clearly call out Iran for its support of the Hamas attacks or hold anyone accountable for our intel failures regarding a terrorist attack that killed over 40 Americans. Reminder, Hamas is still holding American hostages. I won't even discuss the pier we built that sank or the embarrassing war with the Houthis. Domestically, we've lost track of thousands of known terrorists within the U.S. and watched terrorism designations be completely ignored for groups like the Haqqani Network, allowing its members to relocate here and live amongst us. It also allowed a cover-up of the group's role in the Abbey Gate bombing that killed 13 U.S. service members. On top of all that, we just learned the federal air marshals haven't had intel support or a unit since 2003. But please, Congress, tell us you're doing oversight. I mean, that's a pretty fire post right there. And by the way, Mike Johnson's overseen most of that. Hey, look, Kevin Downey Jr.'s in tonight.
Party, it gets in there, and we'll get into that in just a minute. To the House floor, you can see Speaker Johnson down there talking with his members. Let's dip in.
What's up, Paulie Nolan?
What's up, brother?
What's going on?
I must just checking in. I'm trying to get my news from the only news source I trust. That's Big D.
Well, you're in trouble. You're in big trouble if that's the case.
And I only take my picks from.
What? I lost you there. Now I lost your sound. Can't hear you. Can't hear you. You're going to have to disconnect and come back. All right, we'll try to get Paul back. Nobody else wants the job. Well, I don't know. I highly doubt that nobody else wants the job. Maybe they don't want to outwardly go for the job now, given the circumstances. But all right, let's try this again. Paulie Nolan, can you hear me?
I got you now. Were you able to hear me before?
No, I can hear you now, though, since you reconnected.
Oh, good. Good. So what's the deal here? We have a new speaker?
We have nothing yet. We're waiting for them to quorum back here or whatever after they did the first part. So we're waiting. We're waiting to see if this guy gets it on the first vote.
Well, you know what? I'm always so sick of this feeling of, you know, the lesser of two evils thing, you know? It's like, all right, so it's Johnson, great, but at least it's not Jeffries. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just so tired of having to settle for a piece of garbage, you know?
Yeah, but I mean, it could never be Jeffries. I mean, you're not gonna. I mean, the Republicans got problems, but I don't think we have the problems are so deep that 4 Republicans would ever vote for him. I mean, he's going to get 214 on every vote, so it's not a matter of really that it could ever be Jeffries. I don't think, but
right.
The problem for me is we're not even exploring anyone other than Johnson, and we're just rolling over and saying, well. Yeah, don't worry about what we all supposedly stand for when it comes to spending and money going to Ukraine and all this other stuff, because Trump says he's the guy, so he's our guy. I just don't subscribe to that.
I get it. Believe me, I get it. You know how I feel about.
I mean, I get the situation. I'm not. I mean, I get why people are saying why they're saying, but.
I guess it's a bird in the hand.
It's just a roll. It just seems like such a rollover.
Yeah, it feels like a bird in the hand kind of a thing, though. Like, you know, and I think people have faith that Trump can harness him in.
Yeah, see, like that's the part. Like it's the old, like the definition of whatever it is insanity is doing the same thing over, thinking you're gonna get a different result. Like I just don't see how we get a different result, even with him, even with the president sworn in. And how do you get a different result? He's gonna start vetoing bills that come. You know, what's everybody's position the first time after Trump's in and he's disguised as speaker, and the next package that has money to Ukraine, everybody's gonna be okay with it?
Good point.
Because that's coming.
I just
Johnson's been for it since day one.
I just can't imagine him after the 20th. I just can't imagine them sending any more money to Ukraine. I mean, don't you think Trump's base will turn on him in a heartbeat? This whole
because they'll blame Johnson. That'll be the laughable part. They'll blame Johnson. This guy sucks. I just showed a tweet Thomas Massey put out on Christmas Day. He said on January 3rd we're going to elect a new speaker. Who should it be? Mike Johnson or other? There was 180,000 votes, 93% of them for other. That was 9 days ago.
Unbelievable. Yeah, I believe me. Sometimes for me, this is out of my real purview. I'll just tell you honest and authentically that, you know, I find so many of these guys reprehensible and identical. You know, I've been talking about, you know, the duopoly, and, you know, now it's been coined the uniparty forever. You know, like it's all the same nonsense. And
hold on a second, Paul. I love comments like this. I'm switching to another feed. Damon feels like Debbie Downer as always. Good. Go, Betty. Go find another feed. Go find a feed that will tell you that they don't care about any, you know, go find, there'll be plenty of people who will tell you Johnson will do great, and don't worry about $36 trillion in debt, and don't worry about money to Ukraine, because it's all grab the pom-poms and jump up and down. Everything's great. There's plenty of people who will tell you that. So go find them. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, we call that hopium.
Right. There's plenty of hopium out there. It'll tell you Johnson's going to be way different. And I hope they're right. There's plenty of people you can go watch.
What was you said? The woman's name was Heidi. You know, I got to be honest with you. I'm sure, you know, Heidi just lives in the echo chamber because it makes her feel good, because life is hard. So we get it, Heidi. I'm with you. But the most important thing to do is challenge your belief system, challenge your ideologies, keep your mind sharp. Keep yourself, keep on your own toes and stay after your own blind faith. We have to do that. If we don't do it, we could fall right back in the same trap all over again.
Yeah, like if you want someone to tell you, like if you want like kumbaya, like there's plenty of kumbaya out there. I'm just not into kumbaya. I'm into like what we actually supposedly believe in. I have said this for 10 years doing this show. I am interested in outcomes. I am not interested in grabbing the pom-poms and being a part of the in crowd and jumping up and down and going, oh yeah, everything's great, when it's not great. I don't care if it's our side or their side. If you can't call it out that it's not great just because it's your guy, then it's a cult to you. It's not.
That's exactly right. And then you become what you despise. You become the religious fanatic of the left. You become the exact same thing on it with a different deity.
By the way, I'm sorry, Paul, to jump in. I'm just putting this up. Patrick Morrissey put, I'm with Bannon, no Johnson. And I'm so happy to hear, because I have not watched Steve at all. And I was hoping his position was not going to change like mine hasn't on Johnson. So I'm glad to hear that it hasn't, if that's the case, because I haven't watched him at all. I'm
a big Bannon guy. I think he's brilliant. I know that like he gets conspiratorial for some people, but not for me. Like I think he is so good at what he does. I find him fascinating. I don't agree with everything he says, and that's half the reason I love listening to him. But a lot of times I find myself challenging some of the stuff that he says. But like he's from the conservative side. I want to hear his perspective. From the liberal side, I want to hear Matt Taibbi and I want to hear Glenn Greenwald. I want to hear people who are reasonably going to challenge what I think. I don't want to go sit in just watch the Ron Paul Liberty Report, because I agree with every single thing Ron Paul says. So I don't have to listen to him all the time. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just glad that Patrick put that up, and I'm just glad to hear that Bannon is still like he has been, because Bannon doesn't believe in the spending. He doesn't believe in the debt ceilings. He doesn't believe in caving. He doesn't believe in any of the stuff that Johnson's done. He doesn't believe in the money to Ukraine. He doesn't believe in the H-1B visa. He doesn't believe in any of that. We're aligned on most of these things almost to the T. So I'm glad to hear that he's not grabbing the pom-poms and saying, oh yeah, forget everything I've said that I care about. I'm just, let's go. Hey. No.
Yeah, well, Bannon's a warrior. I mean, he's a soldier. That's all there is to it.
Again, I ask everybody to answer this question to yourselves. If we were in the exact same situation today, numbers-wise and everything else that we are, and President Trump came out and said, hey, I don't think Mike Johnson's really done a great job. I'm not for this. I'm not for this. I wish he hadn't done this. I'm not really for him, but let the Republicans go do what they do. I'm going to not get involved and let them pick their speaker. Would everybody be saying today, well, President Trump, no, look at the numbers. Oh, no, look at this, look at that. No, look at that. No, of course not. They would not. If he said he didn't support him, everybody would want him thrown out on his ass. But because he's run cover for him, everybody's willing to forget everything he's done and say, oh, yeah, look, we got to go along. We got to go along to get along.
See, I need you to educate me. I'm asking you a question because I truly don't know the answer, and I just want to know, does Mike Johnson carry that much power and weight that he can actually leverage Trump back and be like, I'm your guy. I'm the only guy who's going to get all the votes. Otherwise, you're playing with fire, and our uniparty will obliterate you, and we'll put it in full-blown opposition against you unless you make me your guy. Is there any of that a possibility?
I mean, I wouldn't think anybody could strong arm or talk to Trump that way. I mean, Trump's going to make his own decisions, which he has on this guy. He's run cover for him, and he thinks he's done a great job, and that's his. I mean, that's that's his. He has, he that's what he thinks, and it is what it is. I just don't agree with him that the guy's done a great job. I have not understood the whole time why he's run cover for him. All right, let's see. This guy's talking now. Let's see what's going on here.
Congress. Without objection, the letters relating to his resignation will be printed in the record. Pursuant to law and precedent, the next order of business is the election of the Speaker of the House of Representatives.
All right, here we go.
For the 119th Congress. Nominations are now in order. The clerk recognizes the gentlewoman from Michigan, Mrs. McLean.
And there was much rejoicing.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk, and thank you, colleagues. Mr. Clerk, as the chair of the Republican Conference, I am directed by the vote of that conference to present for election to the office of the Speaker of the House of Representatives for the 119th Congress the name of the Honorable Mike Johnson, a representative from the state of Louisiana.
Mr. Ring.
Welcome, everybody. I am optimistic about our future. On November 5th, the American people gave us a great opportunity to get America back on the right track. They gave us an opportunity to get back to normal and to get back to the real issues that the country faces right now. People want the opportunity to take care of their families. They simply want to provide for their children and give them a prosperous future. And ladies and gentlemen, we have the opportunity today to do just that. We have an opportunity to take our country back. With Speaker Mike Johnson, Senate Majority Leader John Thune, and President Donald J. Trump in charge,
Trump's getting such a raw deal in all these guys and what Biden's...
we have the opportunity to put America first again. We have an opportunity to do something about crime. We have an opportunity to do something about the border. And we have an opportunity to take care of our veterans. We, and every single member in this chamber, and those of you watching at home and on TV, should be looking forward, knowing that America will be respected again. Our country is the last.
I mean, this is all well and good, but you could go back to the last, I don't know, how many up-teen speaker speeches from a Republican in front of a microphone, and they all sound exactly the same. And somehow we find ourselves giving the same speech years later, having done none of the stuff that the last person who gave the speech said.
Country, faith,
this is why, like this,
and traditional American values.
Dog and pony show. Excuse me. I don't know.
No, like, I mean, seriously, like we come back to these speeches, and the only thing that's actually gotten done is we've spent more. The debt's always higher, but none of the other stuff actually gets done, which is why we just say this. It's the same. Oh yeah, crime and veterans and oh yeah. And then you come back 4 years later, 2 years later, 8 years later, 6 years later, whatever the time is, and someone like this lady standing up and giving the same speech, and you look back and you go, well, wait a minute. The last 10 guys or girls told us we were going to do those things. The only thing that actually you did was spend.
None of us will get exactly what we want.
Here we go.
The fundamental collective
Let's get along to get
goal
along.
of this body is to make progress for the American people in which we represent. And we have done just that under Mike's leadership. We should be celebrating and building upon his efforts.
You got to jump, Paulie. Just jump anytime, because I'm just going to leave this on.
Mike has remained the same kind and caring person as he was before he assumed this role. He's an honest broker. He shows you his true beliefs at face value. He is steadfast in his values of faith, family, and love of this country. He knows our brightest days are still ahead of us, and I do too. I am hopeful for the next Congress. I am optimistic that we will focus on those issues that people truly care about. I know Mike will be an integral part of this country's comeback. He will lead us through another successful Republican majority. As chairwoman of the Unified House Republican Conference, I can say proudly that we are ready to govern.
Let me assume nothing.
It is my honor to present
Is that the New
our
Orleans sheriff
conference's
behind her?
nominee for the Speaker of the People's House, the Honorable Mike Johnson from the state of Louisiana.
All right, thank you. I'll be checking the news. I just wanted to touch base. Say hello to the audience. Say hello to everyone. I'm going to sign off. I'll catch you guys later.
All right, Paulie. Thanks for jumping on.
All right, brother. Be good.
See you later.
The clerk now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I've had a little bit of practice, and clearly my colleagues took notice. I rise to place a name in nomination, but first, I want to acknowledge my colleague from Michigan for her heartfelt and personal nominating speech. As someone who's given a few of these, I can say you served your conference well, Representative McLean. But, Mr. Clerk, today I rise on behalf of the governing majority of the House of Representatives.
Even they know it.
The American people have sent a strong message that they want their elected leaders working together to tackle the affordability crisis. There is only one leader in this chamber with a track record of compromise, conviction, and compassion. There is only one leader who understands the needs of the working people and has lived the American dream himself and is committed to ensuring its promise for future generations. There is only one leader who knows how to negotiate a bipartisan deal and then stick to that deal. House Democrats are united behind the most powerful legislative leader in this chamber, Hakeem Jeffries of Brooklyn. House Democrats, under the leadership of Hakeem Jeffries, are committed to bipartisanship and common sense solutions to America's most pressing challenges. In the face of chaos and dysfunction over the last 2 years, our caucus has kept the government funded, kept our allies protected, and the economy secured from the catastrophic default. In the 119th Congress, we will work with the incoming administration to make life better, safer, and more affordable for working families. And the incoming administration must also recognize that while my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are divided, and while compromise remains a dirty word for so many, Congress won't be able to keep the lights on, let alone pass anything of substance, without the buy-in and blessing of House Democrats and Hakeem Jeffries. Make no mistake, Democrats want to bring down the cost of living, build more housing, and lower the cost of everyday items like food, medicine, and childcare. Even as the extreme rhetoric rises in this chamber and in the public square, we will not stop advocating for the policies that do the most good for the most people. Because of Hakeem's leadership, we will never abandon our values or sacrifice our bedrock principles of freedom and democracy. When America's enemies abroad threatened our democratic ally, Ukraine, when terrorists attacked our strongest ally, Israel, it was Hakeem Jeffries and House Democrats who delivered the votes and stood tall for America's national security. When the least, the lost, and the left behind were threatened with devastating cuts, Hakeem Jeffries stood with America's mothers, children, and veterans. When the incoming administration wanted to raise the debt limit by trillions of dollars in order to finance tax cuts for the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected, leaving middle-class families to pay for the bill and leaving them high and dry, Hakeem Jeffries didn't just say no, he said, that's why there is only one true candidate today for Speaker. So, Mr. Clerk, I am honored to rise today at the direction of the House Democratic Caucus to place into nomination for election to the position of Speaker of the House of Representatives, the pride of Brooklyn, the gentleman from New York, Hakeem Jeffries.
The names of the Honorable Mike Johnson, a representative-elect from the state of Louisiana, and the Honorable Hakeem Jeffries, a representative-elect from the state of New York, have been placed in nomination. Are there further nominations? There being no further nominations, the clerk appoints the following tellers. The gentleman from North Carolina, Ms. Fox. The gentleman from New York, Mr. Morelli. The gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Stile. And the gentlewoman from California, Mrs. Torres. The tellers will come forward and take their seats at the desk in front of the speaker's rostrum.
True statement. True statement. Bum, bum, bum.
Game on. Game on. Loosen the tie.
That's really good. This is what I should
There are no other nominations. It's just the two of them. So the only question left here is if he's going to get to 218 on the first vote. We know Thomas Massey is a no. So it really comes down to Chip Roy. So you got to wait for, we got to go through all the alphabet and wait for the R's. There's no way we're getting Jeffries as speaker unless 4 Republicans vote for him.
The roll now will be called, and those responding to their names will indicate by surname the nominee of their choosing. The reading clerk will now call the roll.
Adams. Jeffries. Adderholt. Johnson. Aguilar. Jeffries. Alford. Johnson. Allen. Johnson. Amo. Jeffries. Amode of Nevada. Johnson. Ansari. Jeffries. Arrington. Johnson. Auchincloss. Jeffries. Babin. Johnson. Bacon. Johnson. Baird.
Tim Burchett
Johnson.
on X says this is not gonna, he's not gonna get it in round 1, he
Johnson.
believes.
Ballant.
Tim Burchett 11 minutes ago, this will
Jeffries.
go to multiple rounds.
Barr. Johnson. Beragan. Jeffries. Barrett. Barrett. Baumgartner. Barrett Johnson. Barrett. Johnson. Baumgartner. Johnson. Bean of Florida. Johnson. Beatty. Jeffries. Begich. Johnson. Bell. Jeffries. Betts. Johnson. Barra. Jeffries. Bergman. Johnson. Beyer. Jeffries. Bice. Johnson. Biggs of Arizona. Biggs of Arizona. Biggs of South Carolina.
President Trump's endorsed candidate, Mike
Johnson. Bilirakis. Johnson. Bishop. Jeffries. Bobert. Johnson. Bonamici. Jeffries. Bost. Johnson. Boyle of Pennsylvania. Jeffries. Burkeen. Johnson. Bresnahan. Johnson. Brown. Jeffries. Brownlee. Jeffries. Buchanan. Johnson. Budzinski. Jeffries. Burgett. Johnson. Burleson. Johnson. Bynum. Jeffries. Calvert. Johnson. Kamick. Johnson. Carbajal. Jeffries. Carey. Johnson. Carson. Carson. Carter of Georgia. Mike Johnson. Carter of Louisiana. Jeffries. Carter of Texas. Johnson. Kassar. Jeffries. Case. Jeffries. Caston. Jeffries. Castor of Florida. Jeffries. Castro of Texas. Jeffries. Shirkalis McCormick. Jeffries. Chu. Jeffries. Ciscomani.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Cisneros. Jeffries. Clark of Massachusetts. Jeffries. Clark of New York. Jeffries. Cleaver. Jeffries. Klein. Johnson. Cloud. Cloud. Clyburn. Jeffries. Clyde. Clyde. Cohen. Jeffries. Cole. Johnson. Collins. Johnson. Comer. Johnson. Conaway. Jeffries. Connolly. Jeffries. Correa. Jeffries. Costa.
Gentleman from Brooklyn, Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Courtney. Jeffries. Craig. Jeffries. Crane. Johnson. Crink. Johnson. Crawford. Johnson. Crenshaw. Johnson. Crockett. Jeffries. Crow.
Jeffries.
Jeffries. Cuellar.
Jeffries.
Jeffries. Davids of Kansas. Jeffries. Jeffries. Davidson. Johnson. Davis of Illinois. Jeffries. Davis of North Carolina. Jeffries. Dean of Pennsylvania. Jeffries. DeGette. Jeffries. De La Cruz. Mike Johnson. Johnson. DeLauro. Jeffries. Delvede. Jeffries. Deluzio. Jeffries. Desagne. Jeffries. Desjardins.
Johnson.
Johnson. Dexter. Jeffries. Diaz-Balart. Johnson. Dingle. Jeffries. Duggett. Jeffries. Donalds. Johnson. Downing.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Dunn of Florida.
Johnson.
Johnson. Edwards.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Alfred. Jeffries. Elsie.
Johnson.
Johnson. Emmer.
Johnson.
Johnson. Escobar. Jeffries. Espaillat.
Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Estes.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Evans of Colorado.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Evans of Pennsylvania.
Jeffries.
Jeffries. Ezel.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Fallon.
The 4th District of Texas votes strongly for Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Fedorchak. Mike Johnson. Johnson. Feenstra.
Johnson.
Johnson. Fields.
Jeffries.
Jeffries. Figures.
Jeffries.
Jeffries. Finstad.
Johnson.
Johnson. Fishbach. Johnson. Johnson. Fitzgerald.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Fitzpatrick.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Flashman.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Fletcher. Jeffries. Flood.
Johnson.
Johnson. Fung.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Foster. Jeffries. Fushi. Jeffries. Fox. Johnson. Lois Frankel. Jeffries. Scott Franklin. Johnson. Friedman. Jeffries. Frost. Jeffries. Fry. Johnson. Fulcher.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Garamendi.
Jeffries.
Jeffries. Garbarino.
Johnson.
Johnson. Garcia of California.
Jeffries.
Jeffries. Garcia of Illinois. Jeffries. Garcia of Texas. Jeffries. Gill of Texas.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Gillen. Jeffries. Jimenez.
Johnson.
Johnson. Golden of Maine.
Jeffries.
Jeffries. Goldman of New York.
Jeffries.
Jeffries. Goldman of Texas.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Gomez.
Jeffries.
Jeffries. Tony Gonzalez. Johnson. Vicente Gonzalez. Jeffries. Gooden. Johnson. Goodlander. Jeffries. Gosar. Gosar. Gottheimer. Jeffries. Graves. Johnson. Gray. Jeffries. Green of Tennessee.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Green of Texas.
And still I rise for the preferred candidate of liberty and justice for all, the hope and dream of his slave. Order.
The gentleman may respond by survey.
Green of Texas. Jeffries. Green of Georgia. Johnson. Griffith. Johnson. Grijalba. Jeffries. Grothman. Johnson. Guest. Johnson. Guthrie. Johnson. Hageman. Johnson. Hamaday of Arizona. Johnson. Carter of California. Jeffries. Herodopoulos. Johnson. Harrigan. Johnson. Harris of Maryland. Harris of Maryland. Harris of North Carolina. Johnson. Harshbarger. Johnson. Hayes. Jeffries. Hearn of Oklahoma. Johnson. Higgins of Louisiana. Johnson. Hill of Arkansas. Johnson. Himes. Jeffries. Henson. Johnson. Horsford. Jeffries. Houchin. Johnson. Houlihan. Jeffries. Poyer. Jeffries. Hoyle of Oregon. Jeffries. Hudson. Johnson. Huffman. Jeffries. Huizinga. Johnson. Hunt. Johnson. Hurd of Colorado. Johnson. Issa.
Speaker of the House, Speaker Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Ivy. Jeffries. Jack. Johnson. Jackson of Illinois.
The Honorable Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Jackson of Texas.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Jacobs. Jeffries. James.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Jayapal. Jeffries. 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 Johnson of Georgia. Jeffries. Johnson of Louisiana. Johnson. Johnson of South Dakota. Johnson. Johnson of Texas. Jeffries. Jordan. Johnson. Joyce of Ohio. Johnson. Joyce of Pennsylvania.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Kim Lagerdove. Jeffries. Captor. Jeffries. Kane. Johnson. Keating. Jeffries. Kelly of Illinois. Jeffries. Kelly of Mississippi. Johnson. Kelly of Pennsylvania. Johnson. Kennedy of New York. Jeffries. Kennedy of Utah. Johnson. Kana. Jeffries. Kiggins of Virginia. Johnson. Kylie of California. Johnson. Kim. Johnson. Not.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Krishnamurthy. Jeffries. Kustoff. Johnson. LaHood. Johnson. LaLota.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. LaMalfa.
Born on Friday. Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Landsman.
Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Langworthy. Johnson. Larson of Washington. Jeffries. Larson of Connecticut. Jeffries. Latimer. Jeffries. Latta. Johnson. Lawler.
The Honorable Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Lee of Florida. Johnson. Lee of Nevada. Jeffries. Lee of Pennsylvania. Jeffries. Ledger Fernandez.
Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Letlow. Johnson. Levin.
Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Ricardo.
Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Lou.
Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Lofgren. Jeffries. Loudermilk.
Johnson.
Johnson. Lucas.
Johnson.
Johnson. Luna.
Madam Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Latrell. Johnson. Lynch.
Jeffries.
Jeffries. Mace. Johnson. McKenzie.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Magaziner.
Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Maliotakis. Johnson. Malloy. Johnson. Mann.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Mannion.
Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Massey.
Tom Emmer.
Emmer. Johnson. Matsui. Jeffries. McBath. Jeffries. McBride. Jeffries. McCall. Johnson. McLean.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. McLean Delaney. Jeffries. McClellan. Jeffries. McClintock. Johnson. McCollum. Jeffries. McCormick. Johnson. McDonald Rivet. Jeffries. McDowell. Johnson. McGarvey. Jeffries. McGovern. Jeffries. McGuire.
President Johnson wants to talk about in the electoral vote and I'm proud to illustrate my conclusion.
Johnson. McIver. Jeffries. Meeks. Jeffries. Menendez. Jeffries. Mang. Jeffries. Messmer. Johnson. Muser. Johnson. Mfume. Jeffries. Miller of Illinois. Johnson. Miller of Ohio. Johnson. Miller of West Virginia. Johnson. Miller Meeks.
The Honorable Representative and Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Mills. Johnson. Min. Jeffries. Molinar. Johnson. Moore of Alabama. Johnson. Moore of North Carolina. Johnson. Moore of Utah. Johnson. Moore of Wisconsin. Jeffries. Moore of West Virginia. Johnson. Moran. Johnson. Morelli. Jeffries. Morrison. Jeffries. Moskowitz. Moskowitz. Jeffries. Moulton. Jeffries. Mervan. Jeffries. Mullen. Jeffries. Murphy. Johnson. Nadler. Jeffries. Neal. Jeffries. Nagoose. Jeffries. Nails. Johnson. Newhouse.
Mr. Johnson.
Johnson. Norcross. Jeffries. Norman. Jordan. None of Iowa.
The Honorable Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Ogonoti.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Ocasio-Cortez. Jeffries. Ogles.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Olszewski. Jeffries. Omar. Jeffries. Onder.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Owens. Johnson. Pallone. Jeffries. Palmer. Palmer. Johnson. Panetta. Jeffries. Pappas. Jeffries. Pelosi.
The Honorable
Jeffries. Perez. Jeffries. Perry. Johnson. Peters. Jeffries. Pedersen. Jeffries. Fluger. Johnson. Pingree. Jeffries. Pocan. Jeffries. Poe. Jeffries. Presley. Presley. Jeffries. Quigley. Jeffries. Ramirez. Jeffries. Randall. Jeffries. Raskin. Jeffries. Reschenthaler. Johnson. Riley of New York. Jeffries. Rivas. Jeffries. Rogers of Alabama.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Rogers of Kentucky. Johnson. Rose. Johnson. Ross. Jeffries. Rouser. Johnson. Roy. Roy. Ruiz. Jeffries. Ruley. Johnson. Rutherford. Johnson. Ryan. Jeffries. Salazar. Johnson. Salinas. Jeffries. Sanchez. Sanchez. Jeffries. Scalise. Johnson. Scanlon. Jeffries. Schakowsky. Jeffries. Schmidt. Johnson. Schneider. Jeffries. Skolton. Jeffries. Schreier. Jeffries. Schweikert. Johnson. Austin Scott. Johnson. David Scott. Jeffries. Scott of Virginia. Jeffries. Self. Donalds. Sessions. Johnson. Sewell. Jeffries. Sherman. Jeffries. Sherrill. Jeffries. Shreve. Johnson. Simon. Simon. Jeffries. Simpson. Simpson. Johnson. Smith of Missouri. Johnson. Smith of Nebraska. Johnson. Smith of New Jersey. Johnson. Smith of Washington. Jeffries. Smucker. Johnson. Sorensen. Jeffries. Soto. Jeffries. Sparts. Sparts. Johnson. Stansbury. Jeffries. Stanton. Jeffries. Stauber. Johnson. Stefanik. Johnson. Style. Johnson. Stubbe. Johnson. Stevens. Jeffries. Strickland. Jeffries. Strong. Johnson. Stutzman. Johnson. Subramaniam. Jeffries. Suozzi. Jeffries. Swalwell. Jeffries. Sykes. Jeffries. Tucano. Jeffries. Taylor. Johnson. Tenney. Johnson. Tanadar. Jeffries. Thompson of California. Jeffries. Thompson of Mississippi. Jeffries. Thompson of Pennsylvania. Johnson. Tiffany. Johnson. Timmons. Johnson. Titus. Jeffries. Talib. Jeffries. Takuda. Jeffries. Tonko. Jeffries. Torres of California. Jeffries. Torres of New York. Jeffries. Trahan. Jeffries. Tran. Jeffries. Turner of Ohio. Johnson. Turner of Texas. Jeffries. Underwood. Jeffries. Valadeo. Johnson. Van Drew. Johnson. Van Dyne. Johnson. Van Orden.
Johnson.
Johnson. Vargas. Jeffries. Vasquez. Jeffries. VC. Jeffries. Velasquez. Jeffries. Vindman. Jeffries. Wagner. Johnson. Wahlberg. Johnson. Waltz. Waltz. Wasserman Schultz. Jeffries. Waters. Jeffries. Watson Coleman. Jeffries. Weber of Texas.
James Michael Johnson, Louisiana's favorite son.
Johnson. Webster of Florida. Johnson. Westerman. Johnson. Whitesides. Jeffries. Weed.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Williams of Georgia. Jeffries. Williams of Texas. Johnson. Wilson of Florida. Jeffries. Wilson of South Carolina. Johnson. Whitman.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Womack.
Johnson.
Johnson. Yackham.
Johnson.
Johnson. Zinke.
Michael Johnson.
Johnson.
As I'm watching the chat, I'm wondering if some of you don't understand how this works. Jeffries is never going to get this. He's going to get 214 every
What
time
purpose
they
does the
do
gentlelady
this.
from
Do
the
everybody
Virgin
understand
Islands
that?
seek recognition?
Speaker, I have a parliamentary inquiry. I note that the names of the representatives from the Americas Samoa, Guam, Northern Mariana, Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, and the District of Columbia were not called, representing collectively 4 million Americans.
Oh, God. Stacey Plaskett. Sit down. Nice try.
Mr. Speaker, collectively the largest per capita of veterans in this country.
Does the gentlelady have a
I
parliamentary
ask
inquiry?
why they were not called.
Does the gentlelady have a point?
Have
course
some
not.
respect. It's not going to take.
Sit down, stupid.
Gentlelady's recognized.
I ask why they were not called from the parliamentarian, please.
Delegates-elect and the resident commissioner-elect are not qualified to vote. Representatives-elect are the only individuals qualified to vote in the election of a speaker. As provided in Section 36 of the House Rules and Manual, the speaker is elected by a majority of the members-elect voting by surname.
This body and this nation has a territories and a colonies problem. What was supposed to be temporary has now effectively become permanent.
Sit down.
We must do something about this problem so that these 4 million.
Yeah, good job. What a bunch of clowns. Clown. Sit down, clown. Sit down. Clown.
The reading clerk will now call the names of the representatives-elect who did not answer the first call of the roll.
Biggs of Arizona. Johnson.
Biggs of Arizona voted for Johnson.
Carson. Jeffries. Cloud. Johnson. Clyde. Clyde. Gosar. Gosar.
Well, this is getting interesting now.
Harris of Maryland. Johnson.
Johnson is still 5 short. Paul Gosar is not even there. Or actually, is he there? Is that him? No.
Roy. Johnson.
Roy just voted for Johnson. I think because he's, I don't know. Why did Roy just vote for Johnson when he was first called?
Johnson.
If there are any representatives-elect who did not answer the call of the roll, they may come to the well and vote at this time.
So 215 to 215, and 3 who voted Massey. And the other 2 Republicans. 1 voted for Jordan and 1 voted for Byron Donalds. Cloud. Clyde and Gosar didn't vote yet. So even if Clyde and Gosar...
Gosar. Johnson.
Okay, there's 1. So even if Clyde comes in and votes Johnson, he's still 1 short. Biggs, Cloud, or Massey. There's Clyde. All right, so Biggs has actually voted, right? So Cloud, Massey, I believe. Representative, I think Cloud is the one who voted for Johnson. So again, Biggs didn't vote, but now I believe he has voted for Johnson. Cloud voted for Byron Donalds. Massey voted for Emmer. And Jeffries got his 215 from the Democrats, which is what he's going to get every time. So they've got Massey, which they're not going to flip him. And Cloud, who voted for Donalds. I don't know. Becky Snyder, Massey is not being a jerk, not even close. Massey actually has the courage of his convictions, and he will stand by them. If you call that being a jerk, I don't know what to tell you. I'm surprised Chip Roy voted for him, quite frankly. Very surprised. Massey is selfish. Massey is a moron. Kentucky will remove him. Yeah, okay, good luck. Remove the only guy who actually stands for something? That's great strategy. Jeffries is not. Why do people keep saying we let Jeffries win? Jeffries is not winning ever. He's not winning. He's going to get the same number every time. Exactly. Someone just said on Twitter, you're not getting Speaker Jeffries. You're getting a new Republican speaker, or you're getting Mike Johnson with concessions. Arguing otherwise is just fear-mongering, talking points. Exactly. You're not getting Jeffries ever, under any circumstances, unless you get 4 Republicans to say, yeah, we want Speaker Jeffries. That's not happening. Quite frankly, I don't think Johnson even thought he'd be 1 off in this first round, or 2 off. What is he, 2 off? Because I don't think he thought Chip Roy was going to. I'm shocked Chip Roy voted for him. Unless Chip Roy is just playing the numbers game and wants to, figured it wasn't going to make a difference. But I don't see how you vote for him in the first round and not vote for him in the second round. Now, what happens if he loses votes in the second round? Chip Roy still vote for him? What if he was this deciding vote? Would he vote for him? I'm actually surprised he voted for him.
This is live coverage on C-SPAN of the opening of the 119th Congress. If you're watching along with us, you can see there that Representative Johnson does not have the votes to be Speaker yet on this first round of votes. The tally: 216 for Johnson, 215 for Jeffries, 3 for others. That adds up to 434. Matthew Green is a professor of politics at Catholic University. He is with us, and I'd love to show those 4 pages of math that you have been doing throughout this vote count. What happened?
Well, we knew that there were some Republicans who were unhappy with Johnson and talked about, if not voting against him, voting present or not voting. We knew Tom Massey of Kentucky definitely was not going to vote for Johnson. But we had more, certainly, than I had anticipated. And although many of them ultimately in the second round, when their names were called, decided to vote for Johnson, there were 3 Republicans who voted for other named candidates. And so as a result, Johnson did not have the 218 that he needed to get elected this round of Speaker voting.
Joining us from Capitol Hill is Michael Schnell of the Hill publication. Ms. Schnell, what's going on up there?
Yeah, it's we're still all digesting the vote tally here, but as the clerk officiates the votes and goes through the roll to make sure they have it right, it appears that Mike Johnson has fallen short of winning the Speaker's gavel on this first ballot. As was mentioned, 3 lawmakers voted for somebody other than Johnson on the floor, 3 Republicans. Ralph Norman voted for Jim Jordan, Keith Self for Byron Donalds, and Thomas Massey for Tom Emmer. And because of that outcome, that leaves Johnson with just support from just 216 Republicans. All 215 Democrats supported Hakeem Jeffries. And that 216 number is problematic for Mike Johnson because it's short of the 218 that he needed to clinch the gavel. So this is not official yet. The clerk is going through it, but according to my tally, it looks like Johnson is going to fall short of the gavel on this first ballot.
And that's the same tally we have here on the set. Matthew Green, Catholic University politics professor, is with us as well. Could Ralph Norman change his vote from Jim Jordan? And could Congressman-elect Self change his vote from Donald?
I mean, theoretically, they can all change their vote. The 3 of them can change their vote if they want to. It's possible that the lawmakers who voted for Johnson could change their vote on the second ballot. Anything is possible here, but it's definitely going to require a whole host of conversations, perhaps some negotiations, to get Johnson the amount of support that he needs to clinch the gavel.
When do you expect that, if it takes place, a second round of voting?
Yeah, it's all a very tenuous situation right now, moving target, moving playing field. The first order of business will be the clerk officiating the results, and then we'll go from there to see if Mike Johnson decides to huddle with his conference, huddle with those lawmakers, or get back into another round of voting.
Michael Schnell, have you been able to be on the floor at all?
I was just in the House chamber, just ran down. I was up there for the vote, yes.
Have you had a chance to talk to some of the dissenting Republicans?
Not yet. Folks have not left the floor yet. Everyone is waiting to see the final tally and then see what Johnson decides to go from there.
Michael Schnell of The Hill, thank you for a few minutes and the update. We will be back in touch with you this afternoon. We appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Well, Matt Green of Catholic University, could those 2 members, we don't expect Tom Massey to change his vote, but could Ralph Norman and Congressman-elect Self change their votes and to Mike Johnson?
Well, that's why it's great that C-SPAN's got these cameras so we can watch Speaker Johnson and his allies trying to have these huddles that you just heard about, these negotiations. And we can see him now sort of walking up the aisle here of the House chamber. I'm sure he's having these conversations, his allies are, whether they can be moved now or not. It may very well be that they're not going to change their votes for this round, but perhaps they would for a second round. But again, as you heard, the question is whether they would do that right away or if they want to hold out their votes for something they can get in exchange for those votes from the Speaker.
So he just left the floor. Speaker Johnson just left the floor. By the way, who is controlling the proceedings today? Because there is no Speaker-elect.
Right. So it's the clerk.
There is no Congress right now.
Well, the Congress has started, but the clerk, the acting clerk, the person who opened the proceedings today, is technically the person who is running the House until a Speaker is chosen.
Because there are no members sworn in at this point.
Right. They're members-elect at this point. They haven't been sworn in. But more importantly, we don't have a Speaker. And so until that happens, the highest-ranking officer of the House, who is the clerk, is in charge.
Now, you were doing a lot of math. Do you mind holding up those sheets? I just want people to see what was going on during the vote count, because we had lots. Here, why don't you give them to me, and I'm going to just show these underneath my camera here, just to give you a sense of what kind of math was going on while this was happening. And you can see here all sorts of math as more members changed or didn't change or didn't vote, et cetera, et cetera. 6 people held out. Or 6 Republicans held out, or 7, and all ended up voting for Mike Johnson. What's the strategy there?
Right. So 7 just did not respond when their name was called. They chose not to vote. And there were, a couple possibilities here. One, as this was happening, was that they just didn't want to vote for Johnson, but didn't want to vote for anybody else. And they didn't care if that meant that Johnson would get to be Speaker or not. The other possibility was that they were doing it to make a point, to say that you need our votes to get elected Speaker. We will eventually vote for you. But by doing this, we're making you sweat a little bit and show that we matter and you need to listen to us as this 119th Congress proceeds. As it turned out, they all did end up voting for Johnson. But it wasn't enough because you had these three who voted for other candidates and did not change
Massey,
their votes.
Norman, and Self.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Okay. And at this point, what do you expect to happen next?
Well, this is where the process of negotiation comes in, just as we saw 2 years ago when Kevin McCarthy was unable to get an absolute majority when he was running for Speaker in January of 2023. The question is whether those negotiations, as we heard earlier, those discussions are happening now, or whether or not, or if they're going to happen at a later point. And it kind of depends on the politics of the moment, what these members, what they want, why they voted the way they did, whether they're open to negotiation, if so, what it is they want in exchange for those votes.
Matthew Green, often people are promised the first round. I will support you on the first round. Does that mean that some of the questionable votes, people who were maybe not in total support of Mike Johnson to be Speaker, could change their vote on the second round? And further muddle
yesterday, who was going to meet with Speaker Johnson, said he would make his announcement today as to how he felt about Mike Johnson. And I said, well, wait a minute. I said, what are you looking for here? He said, I'm looking for certain types of promises and certain deliverables that we're going to get in the new year. And I said, well, wait a minute. I said, didn't you work this out? Shouldn't this have been resolved back in mid-November, 1st of December? Now we're right up on the precipice of the Speaker's vote, and you're going in to hear if this is the right member. This is what is so vexing, I think, to some of these members, is they expected something different from Mike Johnson. Again, he has a very hard hand to play. But the idea that, he did a big spending bill initially, that was the plan, that they did not want to do. So he got some pushback on that. He tried to move the bill from President-elect Trump, and that had 38 Republicans vote against it. There were many Republicans who didn't want him to put a bill to aid Ukraine on the floor back in the springtime. Well, that happened and that passed. They also didn't want him to do a series of interim spending bills through the fall of 2023, all the way in, frankly, to this past fall, because he said he was going to run the House differently and they were going to do individual appropriations bills. And that's kind of what Ralph Norman has been talking about. And I said, well, wait a minute, if you have a pretty good canon of work here and it hasn't changed, why is this even on the table? Why are you undecided now? He was undecided. He went to talk to the Speaker, and today he made his vote known, and he voted for Jim Jordan. Of course, remember, Jim Jordan went to the floor 3 times in October of 2023. This was after Kevin McCarthy was deposed, and he lost votes on each round. Some people have thought that if Mike Johnson can't become the Speaker, maybe Jim Jordan is somebody they go to.
Shahasny, out in the hall outside the House chamber, Representatives Mace and Kamek are lobbying Ralph Norman right outside the House chamber, and apparently, according to Aisha, it is really getting heated, and they are having a heated discussion right now just outside this. We should point out this is not official yet, but to your point, it seems like they're going to a second ballot, may go right away, but the clerk has to make a final pronouncement here from the dais. Sandra?
Okay. You know what? I was digging through, as Carl was saying, what is it that they want? And considering Keith Self was one of the Republicans to vote for Donald, Carl, I'll bring you back in here. Looking back at a tweet he put out yesterday, Self, the 118th Congress was out of control when it came to spending. New recruits are now arriving for the 119th Congress, and I invite them to join the few of us who are working on behalf of the American people to stop the big spenders. That was his message just about 24 hours before he cast his vote for Byron Donalds. Carl.
Well, look, I understand the desire to cut back spending, but you do that by working together as a team. You don't do it by trying to kneecap your leader on the first day of the session. Ralph Norman last November said, I want to do everything I can to support Donald Trump's agenda within reason. Well, within reason is getting a Speaker of the House who will...
Cannot listen to this guy. The architect. The architect of what? All right, no need to listen to just the sound coming from the floor. Let's go back.
Sounding very optimistic as he endorsed Mike Johnson earlier, put out a Truth Social statement saying good luck today to Speaker Mike Johnson, a fine man of great ability who is very close to having 100% support. A win for Mike today will be a big win for the Republican Party and yet another acknowledgement for our 129-year most consequential presidential election, a big affirmation indeed. MAGA, I have not seen any reaction yet from the president-elect based on what we're seeing right now. Although, Brett, that could change obviously in the next few minutes as we continue to watch this play out, and we could get another round of speeches here shortly.
Yeah, as we start the 2 o'clock hour on the East Coast, America Reports. I'm Brett Baer in for John Roberts. Sandra in New York, good to be with you. This is history. We're watching something that is not happening, despite the wishes of President-elect Trump. He made clear and was even making phone calls today to some of these so-called undecided Republicans, thought that they had.
Burchett of Tennessee. Dana.
Yes, thank you so much. And Congressman, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
We just, I don't know, 5 minutes ago or so, we're watching the goings-on on the floor. You sat down next to the speaker. You were telling him something. Can you enlighten us? What's going on?
Yeah, I was telling him what I thought of what was going on, and I felt where he could meet with some folks one-on-one away from everybody thumping their chests at him.
So who's he meeting with? What's happening?
He's meeting with, I'd say he's meeting with the ones who didn't vote for him, would be my guess.
So there's three of them. So there's...
But I discount Thomas Massey.
Because Thomas Massey's never going to...
No, Thomas has already said he's not for him, and he's not going to. He's a principled guy, and I'm not going to
Okay, so we're talking about Ralph Norman.
Yeah, at least there's one.
And Keith Self. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I'd say that's right.
Okay. So
I think he'll meet with them individually and try to get to a point. Because you see, you had so many other holdouts, and they were sending a message by passing.
What was that message?
I think that they were...
Well, you were one of them, so what was
No, ma'am, I didn't.
Oh, no, you
pass.
weren't. You voted yes
I voted
originally.
for him, yes, ma'am. Yeah,
forgive me.
That's okay. That's okay. No, I think they just want him to know there's an issue with the Freedom Caucus, and they would like to see Chip Roy as chairman of the Rules Committee. Now, outside of these walls of Congress, I doubt anybody really gives a rip. Maybe people in Chip's district do. But it's important to them, and it's something that they'd like to see. They'd like to see more conservative representation. I think that's part of the problem that we have with the spending. We just feel like things get to us on the floor, and we have little or no say about it. I'm not in the Freedom Caucus. I just vote conservative as they do.
Because the Rules Committee is the one in the House of Representatives that really determines how things are going to go on the House floor. It's very different from the Senate. This is key. Speaker Johnson said to my colleagues this morning, he's not going to do that. I think Lauren Fox asked specifically,
yes, ma'am,
will you allow Chip Roy to be Rules Chair? And he said no.
And
do
then
you think he means it?
I do, but I think also they want to know that they have a conservative voice. They want to know that the Mike Johnson that they elected Speaker the first time is going to be the Mike Johnson they elected the second time. And we had a little bit of falling out on those last three bills that we ended up voting for one, of course. I did not. But just the spending that was involved in that and lifting the caps and things like that. We thought there was a disconnect between President Trump, the speaker, and us, and we felt like that we were not informed of what was going on.
And just to sort of make sure that our viewers understand what is happening as we speak, you came off the floor to come and speak to us, which we appreciate.
Gladly.
The vote is not closed. The first vote is not closed. So even though 3 Republicans have voted effectively against Mike Johnson, what it sounds like you helped arrange was a conversation that he's having as we speak with Keith Self and with Ralph Norman. What are they asking for in addition to
Keith Self and Ralph Norman, 2 names I would not have thought we'd be talking about. I thought we'd be talking about Massey, Chip Roy, and maybe one other.
Who I thought was very statesmanlike, begrudgingly, but he did vote for Mike Johnson. I think they're going to ask for just a voice. I think at this point, you know, it's
now
not
we know
to
why
save
Chip
face,
Roy
but
voted.
you have to go back to your constituents and say, I asked for this and I got it. It's not necessarily a quid pro quo. I think there's a psychological aspect to it, but there's also a real aspect of the fact that they want more fiscal restraint. And I believe that's what that message needs to be conveyed. And I suspect President Trump would be calling them. If I know President Trump,
they're probably on the phone right now.
I would say that would not be, but I hate to correct you, but the vote apparently has been closed now.
Oh, it has been closed.
Yes, ma'am.
So
The reason I say that, I was of that belief, and I wasn't going to leave the floor, but I actually reached over and asked Speaker Johnson because I had to get it from the horse's mouth.
Okay.
So,
well,
and if I get a text and Speaker Johnson says, "Where the heck are you?" Then I'm gonna.
Well, you let us know. He can just give you a call. We can get him right on the air.
No, I'm just getting somebody calling me now that my dog's out, so we're good.
There you go.
Yeah.
Congressman, former Congressman, former Speaker, I suppose, Patrick McHenry was on our air earlier saying that part of the symbolism around the message that we're hearing from these conservatives is that there are potentially enough of them to remove Johnson as Speaker under the adjusted rules. Is that part of this? And is that like an implicit threat as this is going on?
Well, it always is. It's a one person. One person can do that, can bring the Speaker up for removal. And I have people saying, remove the Speaker now. I say, well, he's not in. He's not in. I mean, we're kind of in a limbo state there. The Constitution provides for that. But in the new rules packet, they're going to move it, I believe, to 9 members. And I think some of the Freedom Caucus asked for 5, and they can live with 9, I suspect. And that's where it will move to.
But the sort of implication being that there may be enough of them together here that we're seeing that could move forward with that.
100%. And they could knock him out of the saddle pretty easily. And I think that's in the back of everybody's mind. But I also think that, I've been one of those, and it was 6. And I can't tell you how many members came up to me and said, oh, Burchett, I was counting, and I'm glad you voted that way. I was going to jump in if I needed to. And I'm like, yeah, right. I get that. It's human nature, and everybody wants to be in the middle of the fight. But I tell you, when you're getting yelled at from all sides and the world spotlight is on you, it gets a little tougher than what's going on right now.
How committed do you think President-elect Trump is to a Speaker Mike Johnson?
He's very committed. He spoke about it. That's his thing. If he puts his stamp on it, I think he is behind it, and I respect that. That weighed heavy on a lot of guys. You saw some immediately as soon as he came out with that endorsement, because I encouraged that. I was actually I might have been talking to you one night on one of your news programs, and I said that if it's going to boil down to if Donald Trump gets involved. And apparently I was alerted by the speaker that he saw that interview, and actually that's why they didn't endorse at Mar-a-Lago. They endorsed that night. He started the next morning endorsing.
Oh, it's nice to know he watches State of the Union.
Well, I would say if he was asked, it's probably one of his staff saw it and told him, but I'm not sure. But anyway,
I know you have to get back to
that's
the
okay, ma'am.
floor. I just want to bottom line
I can
this.
pass and make them all nervous.
Okay.
And then I can get a bridge or something, or an aquarium or something in my district. I don't know.
All right. Well, I don't want to stop you from that horse
No,
trading.
you're fine, ma'am. They'll text me.
Bottom line this, will Mike Johnson become Speaker relatively soon? Meaning, will he make a deal, or will he convince, or maybe Donald Trump convince those two that he is meeting with right now, one of whom, well, actually both of whom he needs?
I would say if it doesn't happen in the next few hours, it probably won't happen. I'd say you'll see them peel off, and you'll see a Jim Jordan or Byron Donalds or somebody like that. But I always warn those guys. You know, Daddy was in the Second World War in the Pacific and was on a little island called Peleliu. And the guy on that amphibious craft, they were fighting the Japanese, and it was awful. And they were coming in on the shore, and the guy in the front of the amphibious craft was a young guy cussing how he was going to get after those blankety blanks. And then he looked in the back, and there was an old timer back there smoking a cigarette, and undid his helmet and was probably praying. Daddy said, "That's the guy I'm going with," because the first one over the top is likely the one to get shot. So the next person that jumps into this thing could get shot. And I would say, not literally, but figuratively, politically. And I would say you would see a third round person probably be the one that would get it, in my opinion. I could be wrong, but that's generally the way these things go.
I said one last question, but now I really need it. What does it say about Donald Trump?
You're CNN, and I'm a conservative, so I'm supposed to say, oh, yeah, sure. No, but I'm good with it.
What does it say about Donald Trump if Mike Johnson does it? Like, how much of a question of Trump's ability to lead and to...
I don't think it says anything. I think what it says, the follow-up is what will say it. His phone call with these folks afterwards, after they do this, and with no clear plan. And, you know, where are we going to after this? A good pool player, when I play pool, I'm just hitting the dadgum cue ball into the next ball. A good pool player is looking at that third or fourth shot after that, where the ball's going and where it ends up. Donald Trump is a good pool player. He sees what's going on. He knows we've got a 3-person majority. He's going to have to rein these folks in, and I think he will. I don't think it shows any negative. And if we were off the record or on the record, I'd tell you the same thing. I don't think it shows anything other than you've got a bunch of independent minds up here, and everybody's sort of sowing their oats right now. And I think we'll pull it together.
All right. World War II, pool. You got a lot of analogies there.
I mentioned my dog Roscoe.
I'm glad your dog's okay.
Yes,
Thank you.
Caring about it, but they're pretty aligned on the larger.
I thought that was a pretty
issues.
interesting interview with Burchett,
All right,
actually.
Molly, if you could stand by with us, James and Bill as well. Let's bring in Texas Republican Rep-elect Pat Fallon joining us now. Not all Republicans fell in line here. You showed your support. Why did not all Republicans? What are you hearing, and what's happening on the floor?
Well, right now we're in negotiations and really just talks, trying to understand why these folks didn't vote for Mike. Because in November, we had a selection process within the Republican conference, and Mike was elected unanimously by acclamation. So we all gave our word then that we were going to go on the floor and vote for Mike. So we're trying to, actually, there's really no specifics. And listen, I empathize with the frustrations that this place can bring about. I get that part. But this is not the way to channel it. The way to channel it is to have Republican unity and making sure that every member has a voice. I mean, essentially, we all have a veto, not just on who the speaker will be, but on any major legislation moving forward. And we have to work together. We're not going to get things done for the American people.
Congressman-elect Brett Baer here. What do you think is the message of these three? Have you talked to them directly? What are they saying? And do you have hopes that they're going to be swayed somehow?
Brett, yeah, I have talked to two of the three, and I'm cautiously optimistic. And what we're talking about is process. I mean, Mike Johnson's not going to make any tit-for-tat deals. So there's not going to be any quid pro quo. But what we can talk about is how we improve the process and making sure that every quarter of the Republican conference feels like they're being heard and that they have input. But we can't have 3 or 4 members vetoing everything constantly, or 8, whatever it is, whatever the number. So we're working on that right now to
we can't be
maybe
vetoing
have some
all
kind
the
of a task
spending.
force on major legislation and making sure
Debt
that
ceilings?
the different factions within the conference have seats at that table. And hopefully that will be enough. I know President Trump is not only fully supporting Mike, but he's talking to some of the members that have reservations.
Can't figure out why anyone has a reservation on Mike Johnson, this guy says.
Rep-elect, we appreciate
Representative
that.
from
so
Texas.
You said you spoke to 2 of the 3.
Might as well be representative from New York.
Is it fair to say that you feel cautiously optimistic that they'll come around?
I do, but I'm a very hopeful person. If you throw me out of a 60-story building at the 40th floor, I'd say so good so far. But no, I think we can get there. And but listen, if they're negotiating in good faith, I do think they can get there. And I'm hopeful that they are. But if it's just to get attention, well, then you're going to throw this entire process into a wood chipper, because I'm voting for Mike Johnson, and I'm voting for Mike Johnson only. He is the Speaker of the House. He needs to be the next Speaker of the House. He got our promise by acclamation in November, so there's no alternative for me. And I think there are scores of members like that.
Come on.
So we'll be at simple
Let's get that money to
impasse.
Ukraine,
so let's
baby.
not get there. Let's
Fallon's
get
all
these
on
members.
board.
Let's have their voices be heard. Let's get together. We're a family, a dysfunctional family. We're a family. Let's get this. Let's hug it out, and let's move forward.
Oh, there you go. This is the Republican Party in a snapshot right here.
Speaker-elect Johnson now in a huddle, including Congressman Massey, Norman, and Self. Several other conservatives in the back on the center aisle. I don't know if the C-SPAN cameras pan all over the place, but there is a huddle in the back of the room. Maybe we'll catch that. I think that we have it right there. And they're huddling now, talking. What do you think is that conversation, Congressman-elect? If you say that the Speaker-to-be is not going to make any quid pro quo deals.
I think it's really, honestly, Brett, about process. And right after we're done talking here, I'm going to be right in the middle of that huddle. And because I really do encourage that. I think we should have some kind of a task force on major legislation and making sure that Freedom Caucus members are heard, Main Street Caucus are heard, the Tuesday Club. There's 4 or 5 major factions within the conference that they're all, part of it. Because, again, if we bring any legislation to the floor that doesn't have 99.9% of Republicans, it's not going to pass anyway. So we've got to have people from cradle to grave on board.
Would you care to share
sometimes
the
I
two
can't
that you're
believe what I
cautiously
listen to
optimistic
from
about?
some of these people. I can't believe what I listen to sometimes.
Okay.
It's like we've all like just been dropped here from another planet. Like we haven't all been here for the last 4 years and seen all the crap shit legislation go through. This guy, we got the easy veto, on legislation we don't like. We just get, like, really? What have you been doing on all this stuff that's come up?
Major legislation, as I've mentioned a few times
It's like, what am I listening to?
Have their voices be heard.
Like,
They
are
were a little
you?
upset about the debt limit, and there was 34, I think it was 34 to 38 Republicans who voted no. But you know what? That happened. That's in the past. That was the last Congress. Let's move forward and do it in a way in which all the voices are heard and respected.
Last thing, really
Congress
quickly,
that
we're looking now at Hakeem Jeffries on the floor. What do you tell people about why Democrats seem to have a better ability to herd the cats, if you will, to be able to hold everybody, even in the tightest of majorities? Is it just a different mentality of the individualism of Republican members? As we look at Tom Massey on the floor talking to Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Brett, because the Democrats, by a large measure, are easier to herd than sheep. And the Republicans, as you said, we're cats, but we're not house cats. We're big, giant lions on the Serengeti. And it's hard as hell to get us all to swim, in the same direction. But look at what the Democrats do.
I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think I'd rather go back to CNN than listen to this guy.
They weren't going to church, and they were doing whatever the government told them.
Untapped possibilities
they're in
and
commercial.
relentlessly work with you to make them real.
Man, oh man alive.
I'm Eva McKinn.
That, but apparently they can't escape the very watchful eyes of you, Garrett Haake. So I'm glad you may not be able to eavesdrop, but you see them going in there to do their thing, as we all presume they must be doing in this interim period. I'm going to ask Sahil, Garrett, Melanie, Mike, and Michael, all of you just stand by. We're going to take a quick break as these guys are breaking there on the House floor. We'll be right back here on MSNBC.
Let's just take a little bit.
And he said, quote, no, I think right now we're working on just getting this cleaned up. Hopefully this gets resolved pretty quickly. He said it's a deal-making town, so make deals and figure it out and live to fight another day. That is his recommendation in this moment. Carl.
Well, I think Pat Fallon put his finger on it, that you've got to instill a sense of teamwork.
Of course,
And you
Carl
gotta think
thinks
about
Pat
this.
Fallon was right on the money. I can't. I can't. All right, we'll go back to C-SPAN and let this play. Well, pretty interesting. Not the names I thought we'd be talking about here of the holdouts and what the discussions might be. Yeah, I'd rather listen to white noise than the Pat Fallon. My God. Snapshot of what's wrong with the Republican Party right there. That interview. Holy Moses. Ugh. All right, I'll leave you here for a second. I'll be right back.
right, you're watching live coverage of the opening day of the 119th Congress. Still on the first vote for Speaker. You can see the results there on the screen, or you could have. It was 216 for Mike Johnson, 215 for Representative Jeffries. 3 Republicans voted for somebody else. And as we await either for the gavel to come down and the second vote to start, or some members to change their minds, we want to take some phone calls and hear your voices on what you've seen so far the opening day. 202 is the area code for all of our numbers. 748-8000 for Democrats, 748-8001 for Republicans, 748-8002 for Independents. We'll begin taking those calls in just a minute. We also have on the set with us Matthew Green. He's a politics professor at Catholic University, the author of the book, the Speaker of the House. You've written a couple of other books as well, haven't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I wrote a book, Underdog Politics, about the minority party, and also a book about the House Freedom Caucus as well.
And what did you say in that book? What was your conclusion?
Well, there's a lot of things I say about them, but if I had to summarize it, I'd say that it explains why members would be willing to join forces and challenge their own party leaders. And it's a combination of factors. But the main thing is that even if they don't win votes, they gain other things, political wins, or even sometimes policy wins by doing that.
All right, so we're at 216, 215. As the math is now, Mike Johnson needs 218 to be elected. Tom Massey voted for Tom Emmer. Ralph Norman voted for Jim Jordan. Keith Self voted for Byron Donalds. We just saw Mike Johnson and Ralph Norman and Keith Self walk off the floor of the House just a few minutes ago. We've been playing with the math here. All right, what's the latest scenario that you came up with?
So remember that to be Speaker, you need more votes than anyone else, which is what Johnson has. But you also need an absolute majority of all the votes cast for a named individual. So at this point, because everyone's voted for a named individual, Johnson needs 218 votes. But if those 3 Republicans, one of them decides, yes, I'll vote for Johnson, but the other 2 just can't bring themselves to do it, but one of those other 2 instead doesn't vote or votes present, then the denominator changes and Johnson needs 217 votes, not 218. And
so
in that
one
case,
votes for
Johnson.
Mike
One
Johnson.
more votes for Johnson, so
one
he goes
votes
to
present.
217. One votes present, and the other, probably Tom Massey, votes for a third candidate. Because that third person didn't vote or voted present, now Johnson, by my math, needs 217, not 218, and he would be elected Speaker.
And we've been following, the camera's been following Ralph Norman, Republican of South Carolina, around. He's the gentleman bent over having a conversation. So he is back on the floor. And there's Keith Self, the other of the 3, one of the 3 who voted for somebody else. Keith Self voted for his colleague, Byron Donalds, to be Speaker. So there's Ralph and Mike Johnson. Heading to the floor, heading to the well. Okay, there's Mike Johnson. Let's see. Let's just go ahead and watch. we see Ralph Norman, Keith Self, who did not vote for Mike Johnson, 2 Republicans down in the well talking to the clerk. I'm not sure who was standing behind him, but Mike Johnson was down there with him just a minute ago. Mike Johnson was talking with Hakeem Jeffries. So let's see what happens. This is the case, according to Matthew Green, Catholic University politics professor, where one could vote present, one could vote for Mike Johnson, and it would be over. Correct, Professor Green?
That's the math I've done. That's according to my math. We'll see.
And there's Mike Johnson there on the floor. So a little bit of politicking is going on here. I think he's trying to shut this down on one vote because the first vote still has not been called.
Correct. That's right. So perhaps they are there trying to change their vote.
And we left Ralph Norman and Keith Self down in the well. Don't know if they're still talking to the clerk or not. I presume they are. Did not see Tom Massey as part of this conversation. As he has said, he is a hard no. There's Ralph Norman again, South Carolina. Keith Self, the gentleman.
The House will be in order.
Mr. Norman is recorded as Jordan.
House will be in order.
Mr. Norman Johnson. Mr. Self is recorded as Donalds. Mr. Self, Johnson.
Well, there you have it. Deal's done. Deal making accomplished. Hakeem, I have a deal. I told him I'll only spend $10 less than what you would have spent, and I have a deal. They went for it. There's your Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. Good luck. Good luck. No emails, texts, or tweets are allowed anymore on inflation, on Ukraine, on deficit spending, on debt ceilings.
Well, it looks
nothing.
Like
I don't ever want any emails or anything about any of that.
Norman and Keith Self changing their votes from their
no more.
First vote to Mike Johnson. The total is now
don't want to hear about the price of this, the price of that.
Was needed for a majority of 434 members present and voting. Representative Tim Burchett is joining us by phone. He is a Republican from Tennessee. Congressman Burchett.
Boy, Burchett gets around, doesn't he?
On the floor of the House of Representatives.
Well, you had 2 members. One had voted for Jim Jordan. I think the other one voted for Byron Donalds, and they just flipped their vote. There was a question of whether the vote had been called or not, and so I guess they decided. Parliamentarians had not called the votes, but now Speaker Johnson is Speaker Johnson.
On the first vote,
hush, Damon, you thrive on
Mike
controversy.
Johnson,
Hardly.
And Ralph Norman
give me a break.
Walk off the floor together in a trio. What was that conversation about? Do you know, Mr. Burchett?
I would say
again, I don't even understand comments like this. He was never going to be Speaker no matter what.
what they needed to get that vote.
Now, you were on the list of questionables for Mike Johnson. I hate to characterize you,
okay.
but
No.
Is that a fair characterization?
That's a very fair characterization.
And you
Exactly.
And I figured out what I needed to do.
What are
Why
people
did you
talking
support
about when you
Mike
say it would have
Johnson on
been
the first
Jeffries?
ballot?
Jeffries was never going to get it.
Because he's never lied to me, and I know where he's at philosophically. We just need to support him more in the conservative causes. And I think he's going to be a great speaker.
Tim Burchett, Republican of Tennessee, we appreciate your spending a minute with us. The House is back in session.
Johnson of the state of Louisiana has received 218.
Wonderful. More of the same. Yes, he was.
The Honorable Hakeem Jeffries.
Hakeem Jeffries was going to get it somehow, really.
215.
Okay.
And the Honorable Tom Emmer of the state of Minnesota has received 1. Therefore, the Honorable Mike Johnson of the state of Louisiana, having received a majority of the votes cast, is duly elected Speaker of the House of Representatives for the 119th Congress. The clerk appoints the following committee to escort the speaker-elect to the chair. The gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Scalise. The gentleman from New York, Mr. Jeffries. The gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Emmer. The gentlewoman from Massachusetts, Ms. Clark. The gentlewoman from Michigan, Mrs. McLean. The gentleman from California, Mr. Aguilar. The gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Hudson. The gentleman from California, Mr. Liu. The gentleman from Oklahoma, Mr. Hearn. The gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Neguse. The gentleman from Utah, Mr. Moore. The gentlewoman from Washington, Ms. Delbene. The gentlewoman from Indiana, Mrs. Houchin. The gentleman from New York, Mr. Morelli. The gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Reschenthaler. The gentlewoman from Michigan, Mrs. Dingle. And the members of the Louisiana delegation, Mr. Higgins, Ms. Letlow, Mr. Carter, and Mr. Fields. The committee will retire from the chamber to escort the speaker-elect to the chair.
Yeah, bingo. Well, good question, because everybody was happy with George. Everybody was all in on this guy. Didn't even explore it. That's such a lame argument. Honestly, it's such a lame argument. Damon, we have to give up on everything we believe in because we have to certify the election. It is like, really? It's so lame. And she says yes, that's exactly right. That's right. We don't stand for anything. We just stand for making sure. Crazy. Lame and not true. Exactly. I mean, again, that goes back like, I don't know, like a year and a half that we discussed this. That's like been so far off the table and debunked at this point. No, you can't. No, you cannot. No, you're not going to. Just don't send me emails when you get the same thing you've gotten. Send them to somebody else. Send them to the cheerleading squad. Don't send them to me. I have no idea. We'll see. We'll know very soon if any of that went on. We'll see who gets what. So funny, everybody was screaming about Chip Roy. Chip Roy didn't even factor into the whole thing, not one time. Nothing.
And you're watching live coverage of the opening day of the 119th Congress.
And everybody who says Trump's just going to like all of a sudden have this magical potion over Johnson in Congress to not bring up shitty bills to him or whatever, I guess you're thinking. How exactly do you think that Trump's going to like do the marionette thing with Johnson? Exactly. How?
That is the full Congress right now.
You think they're going to put Trump in a position they're going to send him stuff? You think he's going to veto his own party's bills when they? I'm interested in how you think that works.
Sworn in, so he is not in the Congress as of right now.
Because objectively, if you look at it, yeah, Trump's the president, but the power in all the things that we complain about come from Congress up to his desk. He doesn't.
So then we will hear from.
It's almost in reverse. It's going to be like Congress is going to have the power when they negotiate and put together these votes. You think they're going to do all that and then he's going to just say no?
Until the speaker gets sworn in and he can swear in all four.
Highly unlikely.
Other members. 219 Republicans, 200.
Highly unlikely. And if you think this vote's easy, wait till we actually get to the hard votes on immigration and spending and debt ceilings and other things. Wait till we get to the hard votes on the things that you all have screamed that you care about for the last 2, 3, 4, 10 years that I've been doing this.
And it was 236.
And it ends up not being what you thought.
And that was on one vote. Matt Green is with Catholic University, a politics professor. Professor Green, what's your assessment of what's happened so far this afternoon?
Certainly it certainly hasn't been as wild and drawn out as the last effort to elect a speaker after a new Congress in 2023. But at the same time, what we're seeing is a consequence of a very, very narrow majority that Republicans have and the difficulty that both parties, but especially House Republicans, have had in keeping unified. When you have a very tiny majority on a vote where you're not going to get any votes from the other party, you've got to have everybody voting together. And it only in this case takes a handful to say no, to prevent or at least delay the selection of a speaker from the majority party.
And if you are just joining us, the vote had stood at 2.
All right, let's flip back over here and see what they're talking about. Uh-oh, no sound. I'll take that as a compliment. I'll take that as a compliment. Watching this vote reminded me of the first time trying to herd feral cats for TNR. Happy New Year. $25 super chat. Thank you very much. Yeah. All right. As do I. As do I. So, all right, we'll do more of this. I don't know if I can do more of this. I'll let them do it tonight. See what they think. I think I'm on an island by myself anyway, so you know how I feel about it. We'll let the guys voice their opinion tonight. And at this point, we move forward. Mike Johnson's the speaker. And, yeah, we'll see. And so, listen, I hope it's totally different. I hope it's totally different. I hope all the legislation they bring up is what we believe in. I hope it represents limited government. I hope it represents everything that America First is supposed to represent. I hope that it doesn't, I hope we address spending. I hope we address entitlements. I hope we address the deficit. I hope we address money flying out all over the world. I hope we address all these things. I hope we address the debt ceiling. I hope we address omnibus bills. I hope we're anti everything that Mike Johnson just did for 2 years. I hope we get the absolute opposite of that now in these next 2 years. That's my hope. That's this little birdie on my shoulder says that. My brain, what's in my head, tells me that I'd be dreaming as much as everybody else seems to be dreaming if they think that that's going to be if it's going to be different. So, but we'll see. We will see what the Trump effect actually looks like over Speaker Mike Johnson now for the next 2 years. I will see you tonight. 8 p.m. Real America's Voice, live from Studio 6B. Kevin Downey Jr. sits in with us tonight. Of course, Rick Delgado and Slick Rick will be there. The four of us will be there. We'll put a wrap on the week, talk about this, obviously, monumental day, the first of many coming up. Now we move to Monday. And, of course, the certification of the electors coming to Congress from the election. And we'll deal with all of the Jamie Raskins of the world stepping up, jumping up, saying as Kamala Harris has to oversee this as the vice president, that they object, and she'll say, well, do you have a signature from a congresswoman? No, I do not. And we're going to go through that whole charade on Monday, but we'll be here to watch it. I'll be streaming it, of course. Damon, your holiday show was flooring me. Oops, where is that? Damon, your holiday show was flooring me. Well, I hope it was flooring you in a good way. So, Pizza Friday tonight. I assume it's going to be the same as it is seemingly every week. And we'll see you there. 8 p.m. Real America's Voice, and of course live here on all socials. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe on all the social channels wherever you're watching. And of course, this stream is brought to you by our friend Mike Lindell and MyPillow. LFS6B is the promo code to use when you shop at MyPillow. It'll give you great savings off all the great stuff that Lindell has for sale. MyPillow.com/LFS6B. I will see you tonight on the show, and I will see you back here on this stream I don't know if anything's going on this weekend. Probably not over the weekend, but certainly, obviously, Monday, big day. I'll be back here on Monday for the certification of the election. So I may not stream Monday morning because I'll wait until that whole process starts. So I think that's probably around noon or something like that. So we'll do that on Monday, a little later stream on Monday morning. And I'll see you tonight at 8 o'clock. All right. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you in the studio at 8. Thanks, everybody.